Yo, this ain't parents out to lunch. No, this is parenting with the punch. Oh, this ain't parents out to lunch. No, this is parenting with the punch. Class is in session. Please be seated. Behaviors that get attention get repeated. Avoid the power struggle cause it will get you heated. Listen to Amanda cause she knows how to teach it. Yo, this ain't parents out to lunch. No, this is parenting with the punch. Oh, this ain't parents out to lunch. No, this is parenting with the punch. Yeah, yeah,
Hello and welcome to the podcast show, Parenting with a Punch. I have an amazing guest here, Tara. Tara, I don't want to butcher your last name. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Forey.
Forey. Yep. Okay, great. Tara Forey with Riverside Educational Consulting. How's it going?
It's good. It's actually Tara Kafori from River Educational Consulting.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. No, it's okay. So my husband is Lebanese, and so the K and the F together is a very uncomfortable consonant pronunciation.
Yes.
So I get it all the time. That's what I know telemarketers are calling my house. People who know me. So and I run River Educational Consulting, which is a specialized consulting firm that goes into schools and community centers, sporting associations, and first responder units to address non-suicidal self-injury, self-harm, suicide, addiction, anxiety, trauma, and other aspects of everyday living.
Awesome. So amazing. And so you are local to the Boston area as well.
Right. Yep, our hub is in West Roxbury, but we travel all over. For example, tomorrow I'll be in Connecticut for the afternoon in Bethlehem, Connecticut, at another facility to help them understand adverse childhood experiences.
Now, are you familiar with ACE? I think it's the ACE. With adverse, you are, okay.
So ACE actually stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, which can stem from either small to what we consider a smaller event of trauma to a larger event of trauma, also anxiety, the development of anxiety, and any kind of cognitive concern.
Awesome. I the work that you're putting out into this world, especially with the trauma and just, suicide for our older kids, which I'm sure you've probably seen it even in some of our younger ones, but it's so huge. And I mean, this work is so important. And, I'd love to hear are you noticing, like with social media, have you noticed like an increase, or just with children just experiencing more anxiety, or?
Well, I think that's a very loaded question in and of itself.
Yeah.
But no, it's a very good question. But we have to realize that too. Media does have an impact. Our expectations as parents have an impact. Our parenting skills are completely altered from, not completely, but pretty significantly differing from our generations before us. And there is no real ability to stay home, one parent to stay home. Both parents usually work. Right. It is more frequent that now we have all different kinds of family setups. So two parents may work. There might be a single parent household here and a single parent household there. There may be only one parent. And that also puts undue stress on the adolescent before we even realize that it's happening. So children tend to, at a younger and younger age, tend to take on that stress that we give them anxiety as parents as well. So I don't want to just say media is the only thing. I think media has a big effect. I mean, we joke around in the mental health profession and the education profession. We joke around about the Kardashian effect, and that is just everybody has to look like this individual family. So they feel undue stress as they have a little bit too much weight on them, or a little too little weight on them, or not enough curves, or all that. And I think that does affect children as early as 6, because they are watching television, they are watching the commercials, they are watching the celebrities. They see their mom or dad standing in the mirror saying, oh, and patting their belly, or, saying, I need to do more, or I'm not who I'm supposed to be at this age in my life. So all of this feeds into how we are creating children's mind. And it's so much of our subconscious thought,
right,
and our subconscious doings every day that our children are intrinsically taking in and then repeating.
Oh, that is, I mean, you hit it. I mean, it's so true. And I wonder if, I mean, you work, of course, with kids, and you do a lot of like parent education. So, I mean, do you discuss some of this, like, with parents, about sort of helping them to kind of own and sort of like work on their, own subconscious patterns or other things, like, so they, because it's, of course, it all meshes together. I mean, when you're working with the child, you have to help the parent, like, but do you find yourself doing that with some clients?
It is actually a necessary part of River Educational Consulting,
Okay.
is to work with the family as a whole. So we don't just address the child or address the concerns that this family might have. We address the entire family dynamic, and each person has homework, has work to be done.
Right.
And that is exactly what is actually being said when you're trying to communicate to each other, what is not being said, and how do we hold ourselves? A lot of our children's anxiety, for example, when we had originally spoken about anxiety, a lot of our children's anxiety is based on our behaviors towards that child's anxiety. If we don't value or communicate that we understand their anxiety, we value what they're going through, but we're not limiting them. We're not taking them away from that anxiety. We're actually helping them learn to survive through that they will survive that. And our body language says, I have confidence that you will make it out of this, anxious situation, and proper. I think so. When we work with families, we definitely, role play, or we'll have conversations about the full spectrum of emotion that we show when we're dealing with anxiety, the communication sentences, the behavior, and how to not feed into that anxiety.
Right. No, absolutely. Now, would you agree too that, I mean, so behavior, anytime a child is exhibiting some form of behavior, and I work with from early childhood to older, I'm trying to niche back down to the early childhood, but any form of anxiety, any child that's exhibiting behavior is some form of anxiety. So they're going through this process of like trying to figure out their emotions or whatever that situation would be. Would you agree with that?
Right. Children don't have the emotional regulation that adults have, but even adults who have experienced trauma as a child still don't have that emotional regulation. They may lash out easier. They may have a low patience level, low wait time. And that is all examples of not being nourished in how to deal with emotions at a younger age. So children do exhibit different kinds of behavior. It can be shutting down. It can be depression. It can be, overly nervous and having
fidgety,
picking at their fingers, or fidgety, or all that. And then there's other ones that just lash out in anger, because anger is a safe emotion. It sounds very strange to say, but anger is your very first emotion that your brain goes to. It's safe. It's a defense mechanism.
Yes.
So yes, behavior can be exhibited in a whole bunch of ways. The sad part is parents, because we are so busy and everybody has to be in sports and everybody has a play date, and we don't take the time to say, whoa, what's going on in that behavior?
Right.
What are you trying to tell me? Kids also don't have that filter that say, Mom, I need your help because.
This is right. Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
If you practice those sentences with the children, or if you sit down and you freeze, You literally just relax and say, let's go through the emotions. What are we feeling?
Right.
And then help your child. The anxiety will start to be overcome very, and it's not even just a slow road. It actually is a pretty fast road once you get communication going.
No, I agree. I think the communication is a huge piece. And I just was actually a guest on a podcast last evening, and we talked about, a lot of the work is really giving parents like verbatim language to use, in that communication and how they're communicating. And that alone can make a huge difference.
Nobody has ever taught us religion. Nobody's ever taught us relationships, like what we call the religion of relationships. You know everything about math. You've been taught step by step how to do it. You've been taught the history and step by step of dates, but nobody's ever really taught us as we're growing up about relationships. So we call it the religion of relationships, meaning like, what are the key components of a relationship or building a relationship, and where does communication and emotional regulation fit in? So it's understandable that we all struggle and that we would need to provide sentences that will work. They're research-based, they're evidence-based, they're practiced, they are successful. So that's what we try to do when we work with families. And we give them homework. We do. We make them go home.
Right.
And it's amazing if you have practice and you have to come and sit back in a room with me and I say, how was your practice? And they have to be accountable for it. Accountability is a huge thing.
Yeah, no, it is. And you can notice very quickly, because of course, a lot of the work that I do, I'm going into the homes, which I'm pretty sure you do as well. But so you're able to see, like, in those interactions, you can tell if they've been practicing it or not. Like, just being present, and, hearing from them, obviously, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and just, of course, giving that you have that strong relationship. If they're not being honest with you, you're not gonna get very far. But yeah, when they put it to practice, it works.
Right. And we require raw emotion, that there is no masking. It's unjudgmental.
Absolutely.
Non-judgmental vocabulary needs to be used. And if we don't get honesty, we can't help you on a deeper level. And everybody in that room, including myself, has to hear things you may not want to hear and hear and feel things you may not want to feel, but you have to sit in your actual situation in order to overcome adversity, overcome anxiety, overcome that trauma, and then you can start the healing process.
Right. Agreed.
And then, build the confidence within it.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, you said it perfectly. So I'd like to ask you a few questions for our guests listening. What do you find the most challenging in working with children with anxiety?
It's actually twofold. One, it's as a parent myself, it is incredibly hard to not solve the issue for your child. That is by far one of the hardest. I think the second is also to not validate the actual anxiety that your child is feeling. Right. These are two very big challenges that go together most often hand in hand, because you just want it to go away. Of course. You want the problem to go away and you want your child to just move on with their day. So what my biggest struggle is exactly that, is a combination of trying not to fix that, but to help my child or help any other child that I work with to fix the current situation by themselves, by them thinking problem solving, by causing them to say, if I do this, I can have this, or I will overcome this. And not solve it, but also not avoid it. If we teach children to avoid, if they're scared of dogs, for example, and we pull them away every single time we see a dog, they're never going to overcome it. It's just going to get worse.
Exactly.
So I think those combined together is the hardest part of addressing anxiety. Anything after that is a learned behavior you can do.
Yes. No, this is true. Now, this is also a two-part question, but what advice would you give parents who start to witness their child with anxiety or they're questioning, what to look for, or like, if it's anxiety that they're experiencing or their child's experiencing?
So the biggest one for, especially for younger children, because you can identify anxiety very young. And the biggest one is a loss of emotional control. So what that means is it's not just a temper tantrum. They can't really put into words how they're feeling. If it's, right before they are going into a family party and you have a pretty large family and they're starting to lose their mind and melt down, that is actually anxiety of crowds. So that's something that you want to make note of. And if you are diligent or almost like an over note taking like I do, I will write it down and say that I've noticed this behavior, and then see if there's a pattern to it. It takes a lot of investigation for parents, but once they put it all together, they'll say, oh, I noticed this. I also say stop Googling everything, because
thank you. I say that all the time. You have no idea. I just said it last night. I'm so sick of
you can't, because then you're pigeonholing your child, and that might not be the pattern that they're fitting into.
Exactly.
It may be a very specific anxiety that they have of crowds. It may be a very specific anxiety that they're just tired or they're hungry or, they're not good with emotion at that point in time. So, I think that very first thing is investigate whether or not your child is acting under anxiety, or they're just tired, they're hungry, they're frustrated, whatever it is. All of these things can come into how our children behave. I think another thing is, don't rush through your child's feeling. Actually ask those questions. Sit down. Who cares if the laundry's not done? Who cares if your dishes are in the sink? Who cares if you have a meeting that's going to start in a few minutes? Your first job is a parent. You chose to be a parent. Spend the time with your child to really parent. And I don't mean that as an insulting way. I mean that in raising healthy children. We need to realize that shorter amount of time can affect the longer amount of time long term. And our children just need to hear that we love them, we support them, we understand them, we're here to listen to them. And again, be open to the fact that you're not going to hear everything you want to hear. And you don't want to hear that you might be, rushing through your day and you're not giving your child enough time. You may get frustrated, but that might be the reality for that child. Remember, time constraints are different for children than they are for adults. So, we forget that as adults. We definitely forget that. So take the time to listen step by step, and then try to see where you can ask questions that help them move towards a solution on their own. So, and that's tough, because what you really want to do is, solve the problem for them, give them more, yell at them or give them punishment. But a lot of times, if you can lead them towards it, they'll be able to do it on their own and validate that. And that'll become part of a habit and a pattern of behavior for them.
And it becomes healthy. So, and teaching them to own it. So you basically, so I was going to ask, what your suggestion would be for the first step. So the first step would you say is starting to investigate?
I think monitor their behavior. Keep a little bit of a log. It doesn't have to be a long thing. It could be a tiny little spiral notebook that just says, this is what they did. This is how they reacted. Things that you say, why are they, being set off in the supermarket for getting the 5 apples instead of 4 apples? It's all these just little idiosyncrasies that anxiety starts to come out, or they don't even want to be separated from you when you go over to get the bananas and they're over by the cart. So just take note of that, investigate it, keep track of it, and then do that for 2 to 3 weeks, and you'll be sure to see a pattern. What
do you suggest to parents, or like, what would you say is your number one parenting rule when it comes to just like teaching children how to take ownership for their actions or for their behavior? And I know it's a loaded question, I think, too, but
it is. It's a very good question. I was just going to say, it's a very good question. So for me, teaching responsibility. I'm in the throes of it right now with a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. And we have two different parenting strategies between my house, between my husband and I. And so trying to find that balance, first off, is before we even do anything, my husband and I have to find a balance. So once we find that balance, then the accountability for children, they need to see that if they study hard, they're going to get a good grade. Or even not even just a good grade, because we don't want just grades. They're going to learn it and they're going to know it and they're going to be able to tell me about it.
Right.
So they'll be able to tell me the life cycle of a plant or a butterfly or whatever. And that gives them pride to be teaching me something. So that's the first thing. The other is accountability needs to be consistent. Yes. You need to be consistent. If you take away a tablet, it has to be taken away and not given back until their room is clean, their floor is done, or their homework is done, or, and sometimes my husband and I, admittedly, we struggle with that because, we might have stuff to do, or we might have a baseball practice or, softball practice or whatever. And we need to go as a coach. So do we let our child out of cleaning their room so that they can go to this practice? So I think it's consistency, it is regularity, it is discipline. All of those three things, by saying you can do this by doing this, and you'll feel this. Right. And children need to have a cleaner, more disciplined environment just because their mind gets so cluttered very easily that we need to create that for them.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, of course, working together as a team, as team A before team B is of course huge. I work with parents a lot with that, but it's true. And I use the same, I call it like natural consequences. You can't do Y if you don't have X done first, and that's just life. I mean, anything that children have access to is basically privileges, right? So, I mean, it's basically, what it is. So teaching them that I think is very important.
And the hardest part for this newer generation and the generations subsequent are, they're faced with the use of so much technology in schools, even to help them better their reading, etc.
Yeah.
I find that really taking the time and making them stop and use their creativity, whether it's through art, whether it's through reading, is very essential in teaching them accountability and responsibility as well, because they realize then that they should not be growing up knowing that they have to respond to an email immediately, or they're constantly 32 to 48 hours that they have off from work, that they have to respond to that, because then that gives you long-term chronic trauma and illness that we're just looking at workplace trauma. So I think that also is something that I don't think we have thought of yet, but it's starting to appear. And I'm starting to see that in children, especially teenagers that I've seen for a few years now, that are molding into having Chromebooks used in school or laptops used at college or whatever. And I'm not against that at all. It's just that they should have another outlet that allows them to be creative, that allows them to see the life in a 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional way that we don't always get on a computer.
Agreed. No, I think that's completely real. I mean, that it's hard for children these days, and actually I'm very much looking forward. We're going to have Tara back on. We're going to do an episode and discuss more about trauma. So I really appreciate you being on the show today and diving into anxiety in children. And I look forward to working together in the future, and happy to know that you're local.
Yes. And if you ever need me, just go to River Educational Consulting, and you'll find us on Google and Facebook and all that. So
awesome. Excellent. Thank you for tuning in to Parenting with a Punch show. I am your host, Amanda Houle. As always, keep asking for more. Don't forget to visit my website, parentingwithapunch.com, to learn all the ways that you can work with me. Join our parenting tribe and visit Tara's website if you are locally in the Boston area as well. Take care.
Yo, this ain't parents out to lunch. No. This is Parenting with the Punch. Oh, this ain't parents out to lunch. No, this is Parenting with the Punch. Classes Class is in session. Please be seated. Behaviors that get attention get repeated. Avoid the power struggle cause it will get you heated. Listen to Amanda cause she knows how to teach it. Yo, this ain't parents out to lunch. No, this is parenting with the punch. Oh, this ain't parents out to lunch. No, this is parenting with the punch. Yeah.